And my specialty is in educational psychology, which is really the psychology of learning and the environments and the settings that are best for learning. So I look forward to today to giving you an overview about some of the differences between high school and college, as well as an experience of what a college lecture may look and sound like in terms of the speed and the level of interactivity that you may expect in college. So I look forward to spending this next about 40 minutes with you. Okay, so take a look at all of these variables here, the SAT scores, the high school grade point, entry age, whether you're in college as a first-generation college student, and whether you speak another language at home than English. And which one of these variables do you think strongest predicts how well you're going to do in college? SATs, any other guesses? GPA, any other guesses? All of them. Okay. Your first guess was SAT, and I can understand why, because, have you already taken them?
No. Yeah.
Okay. Some of you? Okay. Because, you know, the general going belief is that SAT scores are sort of like the bomb, and they'll tell you exactly how successful you are in college. Yes, they are sort of the best and the only measure that we can really use to figure out what are your chances of doing well in college, but they're certainly not perfect. The best predictor here is your high school GPA. And these other things don't matter at all. They make a little bit of a difference in terms of how much support you have. Do your parents know what it's like to go to college? Do they know what it takes to be in college? Does your family know that, you know, if you can't go to weekend events with your family because you have things to do, are they going to support you? Yes, but it's not going to predict how well you do in college, really. Speaking languages other than English is probably a great benefit rather than a detriment to how well you're going to do in college. SAT scores, yes they do, but GPA is a much better predictor of how well you're going to do in college. Can you give me a guess as to why? Why do you think SAT scores are not as good of a predictor as GPA? What do you think? What do they measure? What do you think SATs are supposed to measure? Your knowledge and how
well you understand things.
How well you understand things and kind of how smart you are, right? They're supposed to sort of capture your ability. What does GPA really demonstrate? In addition to that, in addition to kind of giving a sense as to how smart you are, how able you are, what else does GPA measure? Grade point average, but what does it demonstrate? What's that? Work ethic, absolutely, absolutely. SATs are supposed to sort of encapsulate how able you are, whereas GPA really shows how hard you work as well. Because GPA shows your progress over a long period of time, over different assignments, not just sitting down and having 45 minutes to crunch some ideas. So we find that this is actually the best predictor because it shows how hard you're willing to work. Okay, next slide. What do you think will be a major difference between high school and college? How many of you already have been accepted or are heading to college? I'm like, yes, where are you going? Excellent, okay. Anybody else yet? What do you think will be, once you get there, what do you think will be the biggest difference between high school and college? Just shout them out. There's no right or wrong answer here. Just go ahead and throw out some guesses. The amount of work, what else? You pick your own classes, what else?
Tighter schedule.
Tighter schedule, we'll talk about that. You may be surprised. You may be surprised. What other things? What's that? The nature of professors will change, absolutely. Generally, when in high school, really your teachers are sort of hired and promoted based on how good they are as teachers. How do you think professors are generally hired and promoted? Based on what? Their research. Exactly. In the best universities, professors get hired and promoted based on the goodness of their research, not necessarily as much as how good they are as teachers. But here's the key difference that we will experience. Oops. You know what? This is the student version. So the The instructor version, which I forgot to open, which is okay, would say here, teacher directed in high school to student directed in college. So if you have a pen, you can write that down and just imagine that it's here. Teacher directed to student directed. Because basically in high school, your teachers kind of keep on top of you and say, look, drafts are due, and why are you missing, and where's so-and-so, and you also have parents and maybe other people in your life that are kind of looking over your shoulder and making sure you have homework due, so on and so forth. Guess what? In college, if you don't, student directed, if you don't direct your own behavior, you're in trouble. Because imagine yourself in a course hall of 300 students like yourself. Your professor has no idea whether you showed up to lecture today or not. He or she has no idea whether you read your textbook and whether you've done the homework assignments that were suggested to prepare you for lecture, so on and so forth. So the onus to be successful is truly on you. The environment shifts very significantly in that aspect. Teacher to student directed. And when we look at it in educational psychology, which is the field that I'm in, we talk about it as self-regulation. Self-regulation, right up there. So it's not teacher regulated anymore. It's not teachers and your parents. You're gonna graduate to the next level of maturity. It's self-regulation. And in order to be truly successful in college, here are the 6 areas that you will need to consider. And these areas are the ones that will determine how successfully you're able to regulate your academic behavior, and as a result, how successful you'll be. So you've got motivation. Are you able to maintain your level of motivation? It's kind of like in sports. When you think about really fabulous athletes, think about the best golfers, the best tennis players, the best football players, the best wrestlers, whatnot. Do you think there's a big difference in their ability at the very top? Is there a big difference in their ability to play their sports or perform at their sports? What do you think? You think? Like, think about, let's just take, I don't know. Take tennis, female tennis players. Who do we have there? Justin, Henin, Serena, Maria Sharapova. Do you think among the top 10, there's a huge difference in how capable they are at playing tennis? Not really. Most people will tell you, most coaches, most sports commentators will tell you, there's not a big difference in how able they are. What matters is the mental game. The mental game. How well they're able to handle a couple sets going south, so to speak. Okay? Do they start expecting failure? Does the anxiety work up to the point where they're like, can't hit the ball anymore? Or if they're very successful, do they like, I got this one handled, right? And they relax and they expect success. So they relax, they rest on their laurels, and sure enough, the opponent will catch up and beat them. So it's the motivation. How do you handle your first failure? You show up to your first exam, you don't do well. Are you going to let it take you down? Are you going to think, oh, my SAT scores weren't that high, or my GPA was, I may be doomed? Or if you do very well on your first exam, which may likely happen to many of you, do you expect, college is easy. Didn't over-prepared, I'll prepare a lot less. Methods of learning. It's kind of like your toolbox. When you have different tasks, you need different tools. It's kind of like a, plumber or whoever. If you have a different problem, a different task, you need different set of tools. So similarly in college, you need different tools to prepare for different types of exams, for example. You wouldn't prepare in the same way for essay exams as you do for multiple choice or objective exams. There's different tools that you would want to use. Use of time, which, by the way, is excuse me, there goes my cough. Use of time, one of the biggest predictors of your success. How well you're going to be able to use your time when nobody's watching over your shoulder and going, 7 p.m., your homework should be done, so on and so forth. Huge predictor. Where are you going to study once you get to college? How long does it take an undergraduate freshman to figure out you can't study in your dorm room? With all the distractions there, right? Where are you going to study? Locating those places in the library, maybe at your home where you can be assured of privacy and focus. Social environment. Are you going to ask for help? Guess what we find in college? The students who need help the most seek it the least. Students who need help the most seek it the least. And it works the other way around too. And I'm sure you know these students. Who need help the least seek it often the most. I'm sure you can think of classmates who are always, going to the teacher and going, could you clarify this and that? They're not usually the ones that need help. They're usually the ones who want to kind of have a good relationship and, clarify things. But those students, and you may know those as well, who desperately need help, are often likely to seek it the least. Because why? Because they're afraid of looking, incompetent or incapable or being ashamed or whatever it is. Many students in college fall into this trap. They're still kind of going, if I seek help, it means I'm not capable. And if that should be any of you, and I'm sure we've all felt it at times, I don't understand something. Is it me? Go to your professor. Go to your professor and seek the help. Establish the relationship, but make sure that you have the social environment which also contributes to your success. Sometimes it's peers, your other students who can help you. Sometimes you need to go straight to your professor. And monitoring performance. You get those exam results back, what do you do with it? Sometimes when we get exam results back, what do we do with it? Most of the time, actually. Just kind of, at least I like to just put it away and really not ever look at it again, especially if I didn't do that well. Glance at it quickly, go, okay, yeah, all right, put it away. And, but really determining, how am I doing? What do I need to do better? So on and so forth. All right, so what I'm going to do next, as we have about 20 or so minutes left, is I'm going to talk about a couple of these aspects of self-regulation. And the first one I'm going to talk about will be motivation, which kind of changed colors there. And here's what I'm going to give you, what may look like a college lecture on this specific topic here. Can everybody see it, first of all? And it's on your PowerPoint as well. All right. So this is very exciting to me personally because I easily could find myself on this quadrant. So you look at psychology. How many of you are looking at studying psychology? A few of you interested. Very, very interesting topic. Basically, researchers, psychologists figured out that we as humans have two basic motivators. We can either have fear of failure or a success orientation. So some people do things, they go into tasks and all they have is their fear of failure. Oh, I hope I'm not going to fail. Can you think of things that you go into with kind of that fear of failure being dominant? Just say them. Can you think of things that you go into?
Are there classes that you guys are taking right now that you're like, oh, I am so bad at this, and I'm going to do that?
Art, chemistry. Okay, so we can all relate. And there's probably several other areas outside of academics as well where you go into. Maybe it's in some athletics, Some of us are great at athletics and some of us are not so good. So you go into athletics and you're like, oh God, I hope I won't make myself look completely, And there's, I bet, many areas in your life where you go into it really already seeing yourself successful. I'm going to nail this one. This is going to be great. Can you think of those?
Yeah.
Say some.
My entrance exam.
Okay, entrance exam. What else? What other areas where and it doesn't have to be academics. Think about acting, music, athletics. I'm sure for many of you, you go into it, you expect to be successful. What's that? Choir, excellent. What else? Other areas? Baseball, very good. Dancing, very good. So there's areas into which you have sort of the fear of failure is your dominant, God, I hope I won't make a fool out of myself. Or, I can't wait, it's going to be great, right? And obviously, it's not like we're just looking at only as fear of failure or looking at being successful. Very often, these two dimensions, they will interact. And what happens is you can either have success orientation low or high on it, or fear low or high. And based on that, in the academics, you will have 4 different types of students. Very interesting student profiles, which I will talk about for a few minutes. We've got the success-oriented students, and you'll recognize if you're one of them here. You're thinking about success, this is going to be great, I'm going to do very well. And your fear of failure, not a big factor. Not afraid of failure. You know, I think I'm going to do very well. Success-oriented students. These are the students that show up with a smile on their face. What do they not have in the academic setting? What kind of feeling? Anxiety, exactly. The scared, the fear, the anxiety. They show up and they're like, I'm going to do great. This exam's going to be great, and so on and so forth. Then we've got the overstrivers, and you'll know if you're one of these. I tended to be one of those. You have a high need for success. I want to be successful. I think I can be successful. But you also have a high fear of failure. But I think I can be successful, but man, if I'm not, oh boy, what if I fail? How are these students likely to show up to class? What are they likely to feel or be like? They're very nervous, they're very anxious. The overstrivers, they usually sit in the front row. You were probably made to sit in the front row today, so you don't count. But overstrivers are often the ones that never procrastinate. They always do their work on time, if not early. They say, can I get extra credit? Can I turn in a draft? But what they have is a huge amount of anxiety about failing. Sometimes these students do equally well. They're the strong, well-achieving students, but their experiences are very different because, again, these folk don't have much anxiety. These people are often overrun by anxiety. And long term, if you're any of them, like if you're one of those students, you know it. Just make sure you understand, who you are, and make sure that this anxiety doesn't exhaust you long term, because you're looking at many years in college. Who knows? You'll go to graduate school, like I never thought I would, to all the way to a PhD, and if you don't get this fear of failure under control, can be a very hazardous road. So next we have the failure avoiders, who have a high need to avoid failure, and their success, they don't really believe that they're going to be successful. I can't be successful, but I can't look really dumb either. You know what I mean? These are the people who are likely to do things to things like procrastination. You have a paper due, and you don't do it till the last minute, then what you can say is what? It's not that I'm not capable, it's just that can you say that again? Lazy. I'm lazy. I'm just lazy, or I didn't have time. Other things came up. Yeah, some of you are laughing. Some of you recognize it. Other things came up. My family got sick, or my friend came to town, or whatever it is. So you can kind of shift that failure away from how able you are to, that I'm lazy or I didn't put enough effort in. Okay? So those are the failure avoiders. And the failure acceptors, those are the students that are most likely to be in most trouble in college, because they don't really care if they fail, but they don't really care if they succeed either. They're just kind of like, I can't really do anything about it. I could study harder, but won't make a difference. And I don't really care if I succeed. I'm just here. So all the other folks here, the 1, 2, 3, these are troublesome because they procrastinate and they will, try to avoid that failure, but they're not really striving for success either. At least you've got something to work with. Shake them up and go, come on, you're capable. Don't shoot yourself in the foot by procrastinating. These people, unfortunately, this is the toughest students to work with. Failure acceptors. They're just kind of given up to a hopelessness and a helplessness. So, all right. So that's pretty much what a lecture would be like. You would be presented with sort of a model, and then the best lecturers, like myself, no, the best lecturers will give you chances to sort of do what's called an inquiry-based teaching. They will give you and say, can you think of areas where you're successful or where success is important for you? And can you think of areas where failure is dominant, thinking about failure? So you'll have a couple chances to interact with the professor and as well as listen to the lecture. All right. Next one, methods of learning. How? Again, that toolbox that I mentioned. All right, so not a very excellent copy and paste here, but an image of what a high school textbook may look like, things that you will surely notice. Let's take a look at this. You've got call-out boxes, nice, highlighting the most important stuff. You've got illustrations, yes. And you have subheadings, very nice. All right, so this is all helpful to learning because it's kind of broken up for you and there's illustrations. Now let's take a look at what a college textbook looks like. That's pretty much what you'll deal with once you get to college. It's pretty much like right now you're probably reading maybe some historical texts, so on and so forth, where it pretty much looks like this. You'll be lucky if you get subheadings like that. So the onus in terms of what you'll need to do differently in college is also to process textbooks differently than you may be doing right now in high school. And I have a very specific strategy in mind that I want to share with you. So go ahead and read this and give me what kind of a question could you ask about this passage here? Take just a couple minutes to read it and give me a question that you could ask about this passage. What do you think? What kind of a question could fit for this passage? Exactly. Exactly. What is the difference between a federation and a confederation? So here's what we recommend to be successful in college is whenever you're dealing with text that looks like this, just keeps going and going, try to turn the headings into questions. Okay, so here's what we recommend you do. You write the question and you underline the answer to that question. Okay? You turn the heading into questions. So what you do first is you read the chapter or the passage. You read the passage, you figure out what is the question that it is answering, and then you underline the answer to that question. So here's what it does. When you go back to prepare for your exams, instead of having just highlighted text, and by the way, you want to do highlighting in a very sparing way, no more than about 1/3 of a page. No more than about 1/3 of a page highlighted. Otherwise it becomes useless. You're going to have to reread pretty much all the text. So you're preparing for an exam, you've done this for all the headings, you go back and the questions will serve as goals for your mind. The human mind likes goals. If we don't have goals, let's say you go to the gym and you want to do sit-ups. If you didn't have a goal of 50 or whatever is true for you, I know I would quit at about 5.5 because it gets a little uncomfortable, right? Think about other areas in your life where you wouldn't do it if you didn't have goals. So the questions, instead of just the heading, will serve as goals. You go back, you look at the question, and you see you have underlined the answer. So you're actually doing something goal-oriented as opposed to just reading the text again to get ready for your exam. Okay? I'll give you a very specific example of it. I used to work at the Page Museum, La Brea Tar Pits. How many of you have been there? A few of you, no? La Brea Tar Pits? The mammoths and the saber-toothed cats and all that. Well, we did exhibits, and one of the exhibits talks about the end of the Ice Age, and we did 2 sets of labels. One set of labels said, here's the label, 5 lines of text, and it says, end of the Ice Age. And we did all of those labels, and we caught visitors afterwards, and we asked them to see how much they remembered from the exhibit. The next day, we put different labels up. The text was still the same, but instead of the end of the Ice Age, it said, what? Why did the Ice Age end? Or what caused the end of the Ice Age? And guess which group of visitors learned more? The second one, exactly. When we polled those people afterwards, they remembered a lot more about the exhibit than those who had just read the heading and not the heading as a question. So use this, you can practice it in your high school textbooks as well. Turn headings into questions, your mind has a goal when you go back to prepare for exams, and you're likely to be much more successful. All right. And the last one that I want to talk about is the use of time, which I already pointed out is one of the crucial things that will determine your success in college. Here are some of the differences between high school and college. High school is mandatory and usually free. College is voluntary and very often very expensive, right? Your time is structured by others. You manage your time. You need permission to participate in extracurricular activities. You have to decide what you're going to do and whether you're going to do it. You can count on parents and teachers to remind you and to guide you in setting priorities. You must balance your priorities and set your responsibilities and set your priorities. And you face all sorts of new moral and ethical decisions. Here's an important one. Each day in high school, you go from one class to the next, spending often 30 hours a week in class, right? That's what you're doing right now. You're pretty much kind of like, you know, going from whatever, what time does your school start? 7, 8, and you go till about, what, 3? 2:30, right. So you kind of, your schedule is set and you kind of go through it like so. Well, you often have hours between classes. Very often when you're a freshman, you have your first lecture at 8 a.m. from 8 to 9:30, and your next class on that day is until 2. Okay? You have hours between your classes. Class times vary throughout the day. You have one class early in the crack of dawn, and then the other one at 4:30 p.m. That goes till 7 or something like that. You spend only 12 to 16 hours each week in lectures. But you're expected to spend about 30 hours on homework. So the whole balance between the amount of time that you spend in class and the amount of time you're supposed to spend on homework is a complete flip from your high school experience. So you may feel like, woo, I got all this time. I got all the time in the world. But in reality, you have a lot of work that you should be doing. So in college, the false sense of freedom will come very obvious to you. So here's this look at time management. Basically, and this is also something that we do in our college courses, so it's again another little example of what a college lecture may look like. So you have 2 dimensions. Remember when in the motivational profile you had 2 dimensions, looking at success versus looking at failure. Here you have whether the tasks are important and whether they're urgent. Have you seen this before? Yeah. This look before? Have you seen it? Okay. Some books even like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits for Successful Teenagers, I think the book is, which is recommended by many of my freshman students, I think refers to this as well. All right. So you can have tasks that are very important and very urgent, such as the term paper that's due today. Can you think of things in your life right now that are both important and urgent, and name them? Senior thesis. It's due when? Like this afternoon? No. Okay. So it's kind of important, but is it really urgent right now? No. Okay. So think of things that are also urgent, that are due today or tomorrow.
Notebook.
Notebook. Okay. So you can think of things that are very important and very urgent. Something that is literally right due. Okay, you already mentioned senior thesis. It's very important. Thank God it's not yet urgent. But senior thesis is coming up. Then you have things that are very urgent. They seem very important, urgent, but they're not really important, such as other people's small problems. You're bound to have those friends that always seem to be calling you and going, I need to talk to you right now, it's life-threatening. And it seems like, right? And it seems like every day something happens like, I need to talk to you right now, it's very important. And once you talk to them, it's like, yeah, it was urgent because you called me in the middle of me doing something else and I wanted to and I needed to pick up my phone, which by the way, you don't always need to do. But it's not really important. It's like one of these friends that always seems to have important stuff. And then there's the not urgent and not important that, you know, choosing the right desktop design or rearranging your telephone icons or whatever it is. Yeah, you know those ones too? The things that we like to do, the not important and not urgent. So when you look at your time that is not spent in class, maybe a part-time job that you have, family responsibilities, where do you think we spend most of our time? Which quadrant? Exactly, quadrant 4. We don't have pre-arranged activities already. We immediately go to quadrant 4. Why? Because it doesn't cause what? Stress, exactly. It relieves stress. Well, it's very tempting in college when you've got hours between courses and so on and so forth. You have all this free time. It's very tempting in college to just want to go to that quadrant 4 and socialize and play with your laptop and so on and so forth. And what you really need to do and what is the key to success in college is spending time in which quadrant? Which one? 2. The key to success in college is always, literally every day, doing something from quadrant 2. What will happen is you'll go to a large class, an introductory freshman class on biology. You have 200 members, 300 sometimes. The only assessments, evaluations you'll get of your coursework is a final and a paper. So you can go through months of no assignments. Your professor has no idea if you showed up and no idea if you're prepared, meaning if you read the lecture ahead of time, the textbook about the lecture. So you have this false sense of nothing's really urgent, right? Until it's really urgent. And you're cramming because all the other of your classes are doing the same thing. So all the papers are due at the same time. The professors in college don't coordinate with each other as your high school teachers perhaps will do, and make sure that you have major projects and they're not due within the same 3-hour window. You know what I mean? In college, professors don't do that. We have so many courses going on that you're likely to take a course where the major papers are due within 2 or 3 days of each other. And unless you do this, work ahead in quadrant 2, doing things that are very important but not yet urgent, like your senior thesis, the equivalent of your senior thesis in college, the term papers, research papers. Unless you live here a little bit, you're going to spend your life in here right before the holiday season, November, December, and certainly at the end of the year in May and June. You're going to live in here and you're going to burn out very quickly. So that's the key to success in college in terms of time management and self-regulating and spending a lot of time in quadrant 2. All right, so I am wrapping it up here. I want to take any questions that you may have about differences between college and high school, or anything at this point that you think I can answer that will help your journey. Any questions? Or about today's lecture also. Yes?
What other language do you speak?
Oh, what other languages do I speak? Can you guess? No. I'm actually, I was born and raised in what used to be known as the evil empire. Can anybody guess what country I'm talking about? No? Soviet Union. Yes. I was born and raised in a small country called Estonia, which used to be a part of the Soviet Union. And in 1991, when the Soviet Union fell apart, that's when my country became independent. So I'm not Russian. It's kind of like a difference between, I can't think of a good parallel, but my native language is Estonian, which is very similar to Finnish. But I do speak Russian as well because it was our state language. Everybody had to speak Russian in governmental institutions. So that's that. Any other questions? All right, well, I hope that this gave you insight into what is likely to happen once you enter college. Thank you and best of effort. I know we're used to saying best of luck with your studies. Luck really has very little, if anything, to do with your success. So remember, it's the GPA, which is more of a reflection of your effort. Your SAT scores likely to be good. If they're not, they're not a death sentence. And colleges know that as well. If you have a very strong GPA, you don't do that well on your SATs, they know that SATs are very flawed. And it is the one and only measure that we have in terms of really, cutting certain entrance requirements, but we know that it's not perfect. So,
Thank you so much.
so that's it.